It's always my pleasure to introduce our speaker this morning. I've known Reverend Ken for some time now, since like 2012, I think. And I was very surprised when he asked me to serve on the board. And after a while, he asked me to come to the ministerial program. I thought, are you serious? But I have come to understand that Reverend Ken doesn't make decisions lightly. He weighs all the information and makes the best choice. He's been such a blessing to this church for so many years. He's trained all of the ministerial students that included Reverend Keith, Reverend Marie, Reverend David, and myself. We are so blessed to have had your wisdom and your knowledge and your expertise. You really prepared us for what we do here, and we are really grateful. Put on your seatbelts because you're in for a really great message this morning. The Holy Ghost Repair Service. So I'll give you Reverend Ken Nowaczeski.
Thank you, Reverend Carol. It's always my blessing to be here amongst you. As Carol said, it was their blessing to have me here, but I think it was the other way around. It was my blessings. All of you that make this church what it is. I thank you for that. Yeah. So today, it's interesting, the song that Reverend Carol chose and the message that she chose to read, the thing in the beginning. What is it? I forget what you called it even.
The Sunshine Mayor?
Yeah,
About him,
right.
Al Nixon.
Yes, because it all ties into a great deal of what I want to talk to you about this morning. And believe it or not, there is an organization in Hollywood, California called the Holy Ghost Repair Service Incorporated. And on their stationery, they state as their purpose, repairing broken lives. We may not express it so colorful, but that's what our church is all about also, repairing broken lives. You know, there's an old Western legend about a rancher who was riding and he came upon an Indian friend lying flat on the ground with his ear pressed against the earth. And without looking up, the Indian says in broken English, wagon. Wagon pulled by horses, 2 horses. Man driving wagon, long beard, wearing buckskins. Woman in wagon, dressed in calico. And the rancher was amazed to say, you can tell all that just by putting your ear to the ground, he asked. No, grunted the Indian. The wagon ran over me minutes ago. Kind of humorous. So many of us have those times in our life when we feel like we've been run over by a wagon and we're in need of the Holy Ghost Repair Service. But our lesson today is really not about those times. It's more about those other times when we may be tempted to run over other people. St. Paul writes, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you. And you be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God hath forgiven you. I hope that St. Paul isn't talking about somebody you know. Bitterness, wrath, anger, evil speaking, malice, all of it. What is it that makes some people so hard to live with? Could it perhaps be attitude? Maybe they're counting on someone else to make them happy. It doesn't work that way. Trust in God for your happiness. And there's a little parable that I'd like to share with you, talk to you about. It has to do with trust. There were 3 little turtles, and they were going out on a summer afternoon to a country picnic. One carried a basket with sandwiches and relish and desserts and all the picnic goodies. The other carried a little second bottle of turtle aid. The third had nothing. Just then, as they started off and got halfway on their way, they began to feel raindrops on their shells. "We can't go without an umbrella," said the first one. "Who will go back for it?" Well, very quickly, of course, the empty-handed one was chosen. "I won't go," he said. "As soon as I leave, you'll eat all the food and drink the turtle aid and cut me out of everything." "Wrong," they said. "We'll wait for you no matter how long it takes." "No matter how long," the little turtle said. "No matter how long," they told him. So at last, he turned back and started on his way back. So they sat and waited an hour, 2, 4, a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks went by when the one turtle turned to the other and said, "Well, maybe we should just go ahead with the picnic." And just then, the voice of the third little turtle came up behind the bushes behind him. "If you do, I won't go." Does this sound like anyone you know? Why is that? Why is it that some people are so sensitive, so suspicious, so senseless in their relationships with other people? It's because they had a lifetime of happy and unhappy experiences. Has it adversely caused them to be bitter? Perhaps. But there are a multitude of responses to difficult circumstances. We choose how we respond to life. Sometimes we may not think so, but it is the truth. It is our response. No one can really make you angry. You become angry yourself. It's an emotion that you control and no one else. If someone makes you angry, they are in charge of you. Somewhere I read a story about a medical student who was seriously crippled and was forced to walk with crutches. It was painful to even watch him walk as he tried to get along in his progress on the crutches. And yet, through it all, he remained optimistic, friendly, and amazingly cheerful. And a friend asked him one time about his affliction. "Well, I was stricken with polio as a young child," he said, as a matter of factly. "Then tell me," said the friend, "with such a misfortune, how can you face the world so confidently and without bitterness?" And a warm smile appeared on the young man's face as he replied, "You see, the paralysis never touched my heart." So what was his secret? The secret, my friends, is attitude. Attitude. It makes such a difference in everything we do. If we expect and assign ourselves the job of being happy, the job of being friendly, then it's our responsibility. We have to do it. You can't saddle somebody else with this responsibility. Oh, sure, it might work for a little while, but it doesn't last long. If you put someone else in charge of your morale, you disempower yourself. If you think that you can empower yourself in every situation and choose an optimistic attitude, then listen to this story about an impoverished mother unable to afford a blanket to shelter her son from the extreme cold and the wind and the draft that come through the cracks in their hut. So she covered her son with boards and driftwood and cardboard. And one night, boy wrapped his arms around her and said contentedly, "Mom, what do poor people do on nights like this when it's so cold?" And they had no boards or no driftwood to cover up with. So you see, no matter the situation, some people respond to life with anguish, others with anger, and still others with a joyful anticipation. What is the difference? Attitude. Assign yourself personal responsibility for your attitude control. The great maestro Toscanini was known for his ferocious temper as well as his outstanding musicianship. And when members of the orchestra played badly, he would pick up anything that happened to be in front of him and throw it down and smash it on the floor. Well, one day during a rehearsal, a flat note caused him to grab his very valuable watch and throw it on the floor and smash it to pieces. Shortly afterward, his devoted musicians gave him a luxurious velvet-lined box containing 2 watches. One, a beautiful gold timepiece. The other, a cheap one, with the inscription, "For rehearsals only." He obviously didn't have any control over his own attitude. And we will find ourselves doing that so many times. At that moment, catch yourself, correct yourself until it becomes a habit. One of the most interesting developments of modern psychology is the growing popularity of the idea that we do choose our emotions. We have the power and the ability to do so. There's another story I'd like to share with you about a writer named John Powell, who, along with his friend Sidney Harris, went to a newspaper stand. And Powell greeted the newsman very courteously. But to the surprise of Harris, the man behind the magazine grunted in a gruff way and shoved the paper at Powell, and then very discourteously slapped his change down on the counter in front of him. Powell accepted the paper with a smile, almost as if he were unaware of the man's rude response. He smiled and wished him a nice weekend. The newsman didn't so much as even acknowledge that he was there. So as they headed back to Powell's office, the friend asked, "What was wrong with him? Does he always treat you so rudely?" "Yes, fortunately, I'm afraid he does." "You are always so polite and friendly to him in response," the friend said. "Well, yes, I certainly try to be," Powell responded. "But why do you keep trying to be polite and pleasant to him and treating him like that? He obviously doesn't want your friendship. How can you be so unaffected by his attitude?" And Powell said, "Because I didn't want him to decide what kind of day I'm going to have." Very important. Keep that in mind. How many times do other people choose the kind of day we're going to have? 2 points to remember with this little story. We can choose. The second one, if we don't like what's going on in our lives, we can change our choices. It may not be easy at first. You may have to keep catching yourself and repeating yourself over and over, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to fake it until you make it. So in finishing, I'd like to say, take charge of your moods, act upbeat, and you will start to feel better. It'll come just naturally. Show resilience, bounce back on your own, rather than allowing yourself to wallow in negative emotions such as anger or depression or even grief. Sure, grieving for a personal loss is natural. It's a necessary part of the recovery process. But some people adopt it as a lifestyle. They become martyrs and they lick their wounds for the rest of their life. Giving into grief has very limited healing power. And you need to get well beyond that if you are to stay healthy and be happy. Almost everybody is going to carry some battle scars along the years. You can be bitter, or you can demonstrate your ability to take a punch. You can bounce back. You can carry a grudge to your grave, or you can get over it. Ask yourself, what is best for you? Carrying all those burdens around or not? Do a little mental attitude to yourself. Go out and sit on a beach somewhere where there's stones and take a bag with you. Start with thinking about your own attitudes, your own responses, your own troubles. For every one of them, put a stone in that bag and then carry it around and see how heavy it becomes. Because that's what you're actually doing with all the different attitudes and emotions that you have. Each time you can relieve one of those and get rid of it, take a stone out and throw it away and see how light the bag becomes. The Japanese have a word called Kaizen. It means a relentless quest for a better way. Kaizen keeps you reaching and stretching to outdo yesterday. So if you feel like life has run you over, then I want to say to you, Kaizen. And get up and say it to yourself every morning. Start your day off with Kaizen, knowing you're going to outdo yesterday. In time, you almost don't even have to remind yourself to do it. And you can see how much better you're going to wind up feeling. So with that, I want to just leave you, say, take control of your attitudes. Take control of your emotions. Don't let anyone else do it for you. God bless you. Thank you.